After my emergency surgery, my ex broke up with me over text, then bragged about her new guy. OMG, what happened to us? Recently, my ex-girlfriend, 23 years old, and I, 27 years old, ended our relationship, which was quite tumultuous. I had actively requested that it not become chaotic, as I wanted to avoid being in this current predicament. Initially, I established a solid foundation of boundaries, communication, honesty, and patience with the hope of fostering a long-lasting relationship. Unfortunately, this foundation was quickly disregarded, primarily due to her actions, although I admit I contributed to this as well. In the early weeks, our interactions began with casual jokes. These soon evolved into flirtations and eventually led to a request for her phone number. However, I was met with the response, "I have recently exited a relationship, and the timing isn't ideal." I replied, "No worries, I am patient. If I'm still around when you're ready, I'd love to get to know you better." By this time, I had been happily single for 2 years after a previous volatile relationship. Just 2 days later, she approached me again, saying, "I feel terrible for turning you down. I realize I would regret passing up this chance. If it's not too late, may I have your number?" I replied, "Of course, but only if you believe you are in a good place to start getting to know someone." She assured me that she was, and we exchanged numbers. The first few days were filled with discussions about morals, expectations, communication, and boundaries, all while we discovered our compatibility. We spent hours on the phone and communicated frequently throughout the day. Our flirting escalated quickly, and within days, I asked her if she preferred going on dates or simply hanging out without distractions. She invited me over, which was a misstep on my part regarding the patience I had tried to maintain, but I was not the only one who faltered. That first night, I lost control and we ended up being intimate. She shared many of her traumas after I mentioned, "It's not healthy to dump all of this on me at once. I prefer to learn about these things as they arise rather than having it all presented in one go." She responded that I should care about what she has experienced because it would help me understand her better. I agreed to listen if that was her perspective, but I made it clear that I wouldn't reciprocate the same behavior. Her history included some deeply distressing traumas that left me feeling compassion for her, even though I could relate to some parts of her experiences. At that point, I also learned that her previous relationship had lasted 4 months, during which they had quickly moved in together and gotten engaged, only for it to end just as swiftly, leaving her in a very dark place, attempted suicide involving alcohol. I also discovered details about a couple of other poor relationships, which raised concerns, yet I chose to extend her my trust. I ignored the warning signs, giving her the benefit of the doubt. As weeks passed, we genuinely enjoyed each other's company, spending about 3 to 4 nights a week together. Occasionally, I would mention things like, "Please don't do that, I don't appreciate it," which I believe is typical early relationship behavior. After bringing these up, I never repeated the behaviors in question. A few weeks in, I surprised her with rose petals, streamers, balloons, a gift bag, and candles, inquiring whether she truly wanted to pursue a relationship. She responded that it felt unreal, like a fantasy, and agreed to be with me. Approximately a week into our official relationship, I started to notice troubling repetitive behaviors and viewpoints concerning her past, especially regarding her drinking. I found myself questioning whether I could truly provide the care she required, whether she intended to work on her self-destructive tendencies, and so on. I wanted to help, and I felt capable of being a good partner. However, her response about her readiness to address her issues was, "Not right now, it only affects me, not anyone else." This was concerning, as I had sought a long-term relationship. I started to hold back my feelings, which she observed and called me out on. Instead of directly addressing my concerns about her well-being, I deflected. As she noticed my growing restraint, even minor grievances became repeated issues, leading us to argue about my supposed fear of affection or avoidance of intimacy. I was painted as a villain for making a few mistakes just once. Now I felt a mix of emotions: guilt, being used, concern, and various others, and I requested a few days at home to reflect on everything. By this point, we had spent most of about a month and a half together, averaging 4 nights a week at her place. The following day, I was inundated with texts and pleas for me to come over just to be in her presence. I stood firm and declined, needing time to attend to my own responsibilities. The day after, she brought me food after finishing work and wanted me to come over. I agreed, but once my shift ended, I was too fatigued to go, so I told her we could spend quality time together the following day instead of merely falling asleep together. I went home and reflected on everything, ultimately deciding to take a chance on the relationship by creating thoughtful handmade Valentine's gifts using mementos of things she cherished. The morning after, I reached out to ask how her day had been, but her response was, "I don't want to talk." I was perplexed, as she had urged my presence for the previous 2 days. She avoided conversation all night, only to send me a message at the end of my shift, indicating she wanted to break up. Afterward, I visited her home to discuss our issues. The same topics arose again, along with the ongoing lack of affection. During this talk, she asked me to be mindful of my actions, though she acknowledged that they had not occurred repeatedly. Yet, she was willing to mend things if I could show more affection. I agreed, we reconciled, and were intimate, leading me to believe everything was okay. However, that proved to be misleading. The following day, after spending time together, I experienced severe stomach pains and ultimately went home, only to end up in the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. Once I woke up from surgery, I found another breakup text waiting for me. I was bewildered and attempted to communicate, but was dismissed and told to collect my belongings. When I went to retrieve my things days later, we had another conversation where she claimed everything was my fault, stating that I hadn't treated her correctly and that I wasn't the one for her. She insisted that the minor mistakes I made should never have happened, and that my views on her substance use showed a lack of empathy stemming from my own traumatic experiences and the destruction I witnessed due to substance abuse. I was heartbroken. Despite my concerns, all the positive aspects of our time together seemed overshadowed by these events. I returned home alone, off work, and under the influence of pain medication, a volatile mixture for processing a breakup. I became frantic and texted her, expressing my feelings and desperation. I later hoped that leaving the gifts at her house might help me achieve closure or prompt her to reconsider our relationship. When I arrived, her car was gone. I realized what was happening, and her roommate agreed to collect the gifts later that morning. During this conversation, she confirmed that my ex was out with someone else, but that she had told her it was morally wrong, and she felt conflicted about it. Days later, I received a flurry of messages demanding that I refrain from contacting her roommates or visiting her home. I attempted to reason with her without raising my voice or resorting to any negative comments about her, even amid my pain. I expressed that I held no resentment towards her, but believed I deserved better. This led to intense back and forth exchanges until I was blocked. When I attempted to reach out via alternate messaging apps for clarity or closure, she mentioned that my past mistakes were the reason for our breakup. While I didn't accept this as the truth, I suspected that, in my absence during those days, she felt betrayed and sought the emotional support she craved from someone else. I made several attempts to reconnect or seek resolution, but each effort led to dead ends. Eventually, we had a 1-hour phone call during which she yelled at me, criticizing my emotional maturity and other perceived shortcomings, all because I sought to express that not all the blame lay with me. I wanted to have an adult conversation so I could genuinely move on. During this call, she boasted about the new man in her life, claiming he allowed her to indulge in her self-destructive behaviors and that he was far superior to me, despite having only known him for 2 weeks. I attempted to point out her missteps, but she hung up and blocked me once more. I began to recognize some alarming patterns indicative of substance abuse, addictive behavior, and an inability to function independently, all of which appeared to stem from her insecurities and issues regarding self-worth. She seemed to thrive on the enabling behavior of those around her. Her roommates, who filled different roles in her life, added to this cycle, but their support only served to reinforce her unhealthy habits. Reflecting on everything, I still did not harbor any hatred towards her. I understood this was a serious issue. I believed I was good to her and that she genuinely wanted to be with me, but the hold of substance abuse was undeniable. She sought comfort from those willing to enable her behaviors, while trying to avoid facing the guilt associated with doing so. I came to realize that I had remained in the relationship largely due to emotional manipulation born from her traumatic experiences. I felt a sense of pity for her and often made allowances for her behavior, which made it difficult for me to consider leaving, especially given what she might do next in terms of self-harm. Concerned for her well-being, I began to work behind the scenes to try and support her. I reached out to individuals who may help her find a path towards recovery. I understand this might seem excessive, but I have lost loved ones to similar situations and have previously helped an ex-partner achieve sobriety. My prior relationship was distant, but we both understood that my actions were ultimately for the best, and while it was a challenging period, we acknowledged that we could never reunite. We maintain a connection built on care and concern within respectful boundaries. I am fortunate to have a mentor who is well-established and kind-hearted, offering her a chance to stay in his home with her own spacious room and private bathroom if she was willing to pursue help. Her mother was also on board, agreeing to fund therapy despite their past issues, as she is a significant figure in my ex's life. Her mother plans to reach out with this supportive offer in hopes of guiding her away from the dark path that can result from her current choices. I worry that this will portray me as an antagonist in her eyes, but I genuinely believe it is the right thing to do. Am I in the wrong? Story 2. OMG, after years of longing, I finally see her, but she's happily married with a baby. I never got my one validation. Here I am, sitting in a moment that one could describe as ambiguous and old, completely alone, contemplating the singular visage and softness that truly blushed. The haunting memories began to emerge. It was something from which I genuinely fled like an oddity. She used to call my name, often not my entire name, just the nickname to turn on the fan. I was both astonished and annoyed by her summons, each time, out of all things, for such a trivial matter. Naively, I wondered frivolously why I should respond, given that I was not her servant. Yes, I would sit next to the switch box, but even if I were not there. Yet when it came to her calling, I found myself unable to act other than to repeat whatever she needed me to do. I felt irritation. If anyone else, any girl, attractive or small, called my name for such a reason, except her now, it seemed as if I longed for her to say my name just to turn on the fan. My full name, can you turn on the fan? I would do it without a second thought, even though I remained unsure of the reason behind it. She would pause for at least 2 seconds after calling my name, as if she were deliberating what to say. She was confident, quite clever, and not particularly beautiful, or so they claimed. At least my sister used to call her different names, which embarrassed me, but there was something about her that stirred feelings in me like never before. In 7th grade, she quickly became the reason I looked forward to school. I played cricket, and even though I would not notice who was watching me at that moment, I hoped she was stealing glances. 2 girls approached to shake my hand, which I did not desire, and I saw her watching as if irritated. Her interest grew. I was beginning to understand the depth of feelings I had always despised adoration. She sang, "Happy Birthday," to me, though many other girls did as well. Yet I, with my reserved demeanor, felt remarkably captivated by her. I showed up at school on a date I still celebrate internally. I sat there, deliberately avoiding their faces. I noticed someone in a dress that was not part of the school uniform, wishing it was her, and yes, it was. It was her birthday, and upon seeing her, I truly believed she was the tranquility I longed to immerse myself in. However, all I managed to say was, "Thanks," even as her clothes brushed against mine, igniting a spark in my heart. My full name, can you turn on the fan? Everyone was present. There was class underway, and it was winter, yet out of nowhere, she called my name, seemingly without any need for a fan to be turned on. I gazed at her face, her eyes a beauty that had the power to captivate. What did I do in response? Nothing extraordinary. Yes, I had always been reserved and timid, a coward. A year and a half passed. I did not forget her, even though we did not speak during that time. On December 14th, I learned I would see her again. I was unsure of how it would go, but I was intensely anxious. Entering the classroom, I found no boys, just girls as I scanned around. I spotted her, but shyness overwhelmed me. I couldn't muster the courage to look at her, and my feelings felt as if they were dwindling away. At least I told myself to flee from her. But soon, she approached me. No, I somehow went to her first, then she came over and talked to me. Once again, that sweet voice seemed to invite conversation. I felt uplifted, and my emotions surged back, yet I still never spoke her name. My friend and I were alone. She approached with her companion and asked, "Can you step outside?" As if she wanted to keep me near but also wanted my presence to disappear. But I walked away that day, December 16th, an opportunity missed that might have solidified our connection if I had not remained such a naive coward. But I still cherished that day. In the next grade, she sought me out once more. We began playing together, and she was on my team, but I couldn't express anything. Anticipating a moment that never arrived became my tormentor. I wrote a letter that I now believe was incredible, but I tore it up, convinced I would only end up making a fool of myself. Soon, distance grew between us. Was there ever a bond that wasn't temporary? She seemed unaware of me, and I of her, as if we had never truly been meant for one another. I used to wonder what transpired, because if nothing had happened, then why did she frequently call my name? I became ill, fell sick, and upon returning, I realized my mistake. She had a boyfriend, a partner all along, and it was not me. I knew instantly, just by looking, that the guy was hers. Where did it all go wrong? I questioned. Well, it was flawed from the beginning, and it consumed me with dread. Why did she choose him, who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere? I couldn't assert he was ugly or grotesque, despite what others claimed. Those eyes, which once offered sustenance and brightness, now seemed sickly contemptuous, and I could do nothing but grieve. The person I yearned to see me as her hero no longer held affection for me. Did she ever care for me? I sought no one but her, and she opted for someone else, as if I were merely a scar on her life. I now wanted her not to reciprocate my feelings, but merely to understand if she ever loved me. I was tormented by the notion of revealing my feelings, not to get closer, but to seek closure. I witnessed her face. We were alone there, as if she longed to confide in me, expressing embarrassment, but all I did was run away, just like I had always done from the only person I ever loved. I wrote letters but tore them apart. All I wanted was clarity on whether she ever cared for me or not, but I questioned if it was even worth it. Even if she did, she still chose someone else over me. Was this love ever equal? There was no truth in it, but my heart deceived me, convincing me that I was superior to her because I was better than her. Yet in reality I was the worst, a coward of the highest order. But all I wished to understand was if she ever loved me. 2 years drifted by. I awoke one night. No one truly affected me except her image. She was what I desired. She was what I dreamt about. I improved myself, yet I remained despondent, sad, and mournfully enraged because my life felt incomplete, obsessing over a mere greeting, knowing I had become a freak. I understood that I could not be with anyone but her, but I just wanted to know if she cared for me. I didn't want her, I wanted her answer. I hoped for not closeness but closure. If she declined, oh my, I would triumph. I would no longer be a coward. I would gain the closure I had always yearned for. However, if she accepted, then I would weep and ask her what had gone terribly wrong. For all I knew, I just wanted an answer. As I waited, I resolved to build myself back up, preparing to have the courage to send the message I had longed to deliver. All I did was concentrate on self-improvement, but my thoughts remained fixated on her. I realized that someone else, likely more than one person, was interested in me, yet all I did was evade because I only desired one person, not even for her, but for an answer, a validation. Years elapsed, and I knew I needed to uncover the truth, but I felt I should also secure a job. I ignored everything for something I had never possessed. Should I contact her now? But where was she? I never knew. Her location was undisclosed to me. Yet I continued to chase her no, the answer I sought, that validation. I aged, but I understood I still wanted her. Another 2 years passed. I was now excessive with the time, and I should have simply looked for her. Is this sufficient? Is this the moment? Perhaps I should do more to prove that I have progressed and not faltered. I was infatuated with the thought of seeking not reconciliation, but merely an answer, that validation. Years moved on. I bloomed into a better person. I waited and waited to become something I had never been. Is this the moment? All that consumed me was the need for one answer, one validation. Now, I possessed allure, wealth, and an elevated perspective because I had finally decided to seek her out and discover the truth, not to make her mine, but to find out if she cared for me. I hoped she would say no, so I could rejoice in freedom, and that was all I craved, a single, validating answer. I knew where she resided, I paid to locate her, and I knew I was heading toward her. I anticipated seeing her at a coffee shop, as the men had mentioned she frequently visited. I waited there, hoping she would arrive, longing to reconnect after so long. At that moment, I did not yearn for an answer but reconciliation, imagining that we could finally be together, sharing that perfect embrace. I sat reading a book, yet I could read the words while sharing my thoughts of her. She arrived, but not alone her baby, her husband, and her charm. I had no knowledge of her marriage. I was unaware she had a child. They looked happy and content. The expression on her face radiated the tranquility I had always desired to explore continuously. I remained silent, observing from a distance. Suddenly, I stood up and ran how I wished for her to be with me. Once again, I fled without ever gaining that answer, that validation I had always cherished. I ran. Now here I am alone, absorbed in my thoughts. Witnessing her happiness made me feel both joyful and heartbreakingly empty. I wanted to turn back, but I understood that she was thriving beautifully without me. I couldn't bear to hinder her joy. I am not a monster. I knew she would never be at my side. We would never hold hands in unison, no matter how hard I wished. She existed solely in my imagination. She had never belonged to me. We could have been one, but I recognized I would never discover if she loved me. I would never attain that one validation. Story 3. I found out my partner doesn't have cancer and has been sleeping with multiple women while I gave birth. WTF. My partner revealed to me at the beginning of our relationship that he was diagnosed with cancer and that if his surgery did not go well, it might be terminal. He also mentioned that his treatments rendered him infertile, so you can imagine our astonishment and happiness when we discovered I was pregnant at the start of 2024. We now have a gorgeous 5-month-old daughter who is completely healthy and thriving, and he is currently in remission. My pregnancy was challenging and isolating due to the intense treatments he underwent while waiting for his surgery. I took on a lot by myself, understanding that he needed this in order to maximize his chances of shrinking his tumor before having it surgically removed, so that we could enjoy a long, happy life together as a family. At present, he is staying with his mother during his recovery to relieve some of the pressure from me as I care for both him and our baby until he is ready to move into our new home with us. He visits our house regularly, and we often go to his mother's place as well, ensuring our baby is not missing him. On Wednesdays, he has dedicated father-daughter days, allowing the two of them to bond and giving him the opportunity to practice being a caregiver until he is fully capable of looking after her at home full-time, which also gives me a small break. Last week, we experienced an attempted break-in at our house. I requested that he come over and stay with me while I awaited the changes to the locks, as I was feeling frightened, but he refused. I also spoke with his mother, who inadvertently revealed that he was not at home. To keep it brief, this is Reddit, and I am sure you can guess what happened next. We argued for more than 24 hours before my doubts became overwhelming, prompting me to turn to Facebook. Within an hour, I found the first 2 women. Throughout my pregnancy, I felt suspicious about many things, attributing it all to my hormones, as he repeatedly insisted that I was being paranoid and was hurting him by questioning him. One thing I couldn't shake was my concern regarding his cancer and treatments. When I asked his mother about it, she told me he did not have cancer, but was undergoing treatment for an autoimmune disease that required transfusions. While serious, it is far from terminal, and no surgeries are necessary. She also let me know that he was in rehabilitation, not in the hospital, as he was battling cocaine addiction in an effort to get clean for me and our child. I never disclosed to him that I was aware of this. I figured his embarrassment about wanting to clean up without my knowledge motivated him to do so to become a better partner and father. I was so proud of him for seeking assistance that I never brought it up again. Regarding his autoimmune disease, his mother explained the hardship he has faced and mentioned that he had chemotherapy a few years earlier, which might explain why he's confused. I convinced myself that it must be true since pregnancy brain is indeed a real phenomenon, or perhaps I was merely too in love to challenge it. After discovering the first 2 women, I messaged my partner to inform him to have his girlfriend reach out to me, saying he should not bother coming home any longer. With the locks changed as a result of the break-in, he wouldn't be able to enter. He panicked and pleaded with me to answer my phone so he could explain everything. At that moment, I began to see things with newfound clarity and recognized the extent of his gaslighting and told him no. Realizing he could not reach me, and that I was attempting to contact his girlfriend, he panicked and sought her out instead. During that time, I stumbled upon a photo she had posted of the two of them and shared it on my profile with the caption, "Could someone kindly ask this woman to contact me?" She quickly blocked me, but her sister reached out to me instead. It turns out their family has never trusted him and suspected something was wrong. This affair was serious enough for her to introduce him to her family. She revealed to me that he had told her not to communicate with me, claiming I was a crazed stalker he had a brief encounter with years ago, and that I was trying to convince people that my child was his. I sent her a copy of the birth certificate and photos of us in the hospital together to provide proof before he could deceive her any further. During this time, I was also in contact with another woman who was furious about his actions and was supporting me by sharing what she knew. She disclosed that he had broken her heart by cheating on her without realizing he was also cheating on me. So far, I have established the following timeline: chemotherapy in March, a 19-year-old. Rehabilitation from April to July. A woman of appropriate age this time, but he was also unfaithful to her. August to present his 20-year-old girlfriend. I then discovered that the emergency cancer medication he had to leave to obtain in the middle of my labor was not what I had thought. I was actually in intense pain from my 2 failed epidurals, desperately pleading with the doctors for assistance because I felt like I was dying while the emergency team rushed in to place additional monitors on our distressed baby. He, however, found the situation to be quite exciting and needed to go sleep with a 20-year-old before returning just in time to kiss me before I was taken in for emergency surgery. That was on Sunday. Now it is the following Saturday. I made a Facebook post publicly confronting my partner about his actions, complete with photographs, medical records, and evidence, while asking people to leave me alone after 48 hours of sleeplessness, numerous conversations with the crisis team, and a barrage of harassment from his friends and family who are threatening to sue me for defamation. If this had been just a standard affair, I would have licked my wounds and moved on. However, I have now discovered I was leaving my daughter alone with a drug addict who claims to not know me or his child while simultaneously demanding custody rights. Numerous women have since come forward, revealing that they also were involved with him during our relationship without any knowledge about myself or each other. This revelation is undeniably distressing, but what troubles me most is the alarming pattern I am beginning to observe. He has informed every one of these women that he has cancer and is unable to make them pregnant. I mentioned that my labor and delivery were arduous. I was induced due to an infection I was dealing with. My general practitioner had informed me that I had a sexually transmitted infection, and although I understood and received treatment, I never accepted it as an STI due to my pregnancy-induced infatuation until I checked my hospital discharge records this week and found it flagged in large, bold letters, "Sensitive Partner STI." He has been telling women that he has cancer and cannot procreate, so they do not need protection, which has resulted in a sexually transmitted infection that nearly endangered my life and our daughter's life during labor. And he was not even present because he was with a young woman who also believes he has cancer. I decided to inform everyone that he does not have cancer by sharing a screenshot of his mother's messages. I aim to ensure all the women he has been with are aware to take necessary pregnancy and STI tests, as well as notify his friends, who he has emotionally manipulated for years regarding his alleged condition, and inform social services and the police about the risks he poses. My daughter and I now have safeguarding measures in place through a local organization dedicated to supporting women leaving abusive relationships, enabling me to feel secure in exposing the truth about him and ensuring that all of his past partners are safe and informed, considering he failed to uphold his legal obligation to disclose a sexually transmitted infection. I suppose his recent girlfriend will take on that responsibility. Moreover, I have received communication from many of his old friends, bandmates, and ex-partners who have provided statements for me to use with the police and to strengthen my case in the event his mother decides to pursue legal action against me. This man has been deceiving and manipulating women for over 9 years. Everyone is now aware of his lies, and I am awaiting my in-person meeting with the police. I cannot predict any updates from this point forward, as it will likely turn into a legal battle that I may not be able to share publicly, but if anything noteworthy arises, I will be sure to document it. Oh, and by the way, my partner is a primary school teacher.